Okay, hello and welcome to the January 11th, 2023 JupyterLab weekly call. We got 20 people on the call, which is great. And I don't think we have any announcements or anything that happen outside of the regular agenda flow. So why don't we just get started? First person on the agenda today is Frederic.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I just arrived. I released the release candidate 0 for JupyterLab 3.6. I still have, it's not very related to 3.6, it's actually 3.5 and 3.6. We have, as I said last week, a small issue. If you use Jupyter Server v2 and start JupyterLab as a classical v6 notebook extension, it's not working. There is some trouble between the identity provider of Jupyter Server v2 and the previous way of dealing with authentication that make it not working. It induces also some trouble on the CI for some unknown reason. So normally we have this JupyterLab browser check that should spin JupyterLab and check that the page is loaded and then say okay or not. And for some reason locally it's working, but on the CI it was not working. I figured out how to make it working by explicitly adding the test extension. So that's fine. And the solution, it's not really a solution, but the proposal in the PR that's linked to deal with the situation of Jupyter Server v2 being not compatible with JupyterLab launch as a classical notebook v6 is to print a warning message if you are trying to do that, and even to abort if you say that the default URL is JupyterLab. So yeah, the main idea here is that I would like people to comment on that. Just to give maybe a bit more context. That doesn't prevent to run Jupyter Notebook, that doesn't prevent to run JupyterLab classically. It's really that specific case of running JupyterLab as a classic v6 notebook extension. So it won't happen either when we move to having JupyterLab 4 and Notebook 7. The only trouble for now, it's really because of Binder, because actually Binder is using exactly that. So for now, people are not seeing, hopefully, too many error on Binder because the Binder image is spinning Jupyter Server v1. But as soon as they move to v2, then if they keep starting Jupyter Notebook and not Jupyter Server, then all binders are going to crash. Yep.
Okay, sorry, it looks like there were, did you ask about the Lumino 2-bit?
No, not yet. I was posing for Jupyter 3.6, see if people, to let people time to digest, but then I can move to the next one. On the Jupyter 4 front, so the two main breaking change that needs to happen before starting beta is still CodeMirror 6 using tokens. I'm almost done with that one. The last bit I'm working on is reworking the settings for CodeMirror. Because with the tokens, I added the ability to be able to register new CodeMirror extension. and to make it so that you can also register JSON schema for that new extension, and so that the settings for the code mirror configuration is dynamically generated. And also that means that the settings for notebooks and file editors are going to be changed a bit. So basically, there's going to be the settings for Code Mirror 6, that's going to be the default. And then for a specific document, then you would be able to override some specific settings to say, like, for example, if you say, I want to display the white spaces in Code Mirror editors, but I don't want to see them like in the Markdown cells editor, then you would be able to do so. So by just saying the default will be true, but just for the Markdown cell, we will say, okay, I don't want to see them. So that's the last piece I'm working on, then it should be ready. RTC work is ongoing. It's a bit more work because it's gonna require some refactoring, but it's in progress. And also for 4, we need to release Lumino 2. And so I have a question, is like, does somebody has item that knows that needs to be in Lumino 2 before like starting beta and RC? So if not, I propose to start releasing beta version tomorrow, and so that we can next week release Lumino 2 RC, and that by the end of the month we have the final version of Lumino 2, and so this will be one box we can check for JupyterLab 4.
I think you can do a beta. There's an outstanding PR, and that PR modifies the API of menu bar, but I think, and I think Mike also commented in the PR itself, that the method being added, instead of it being protected, we can safely make it private so that it doesn't modify the API and it doesn't block releasing a beta now, with the proviso that we get that reviewed and into, beta 2 or something. Is there anyone else working on Lumino stuff that they know will change the APIs and need to stall before we jump to beta? Because we've been in the alpha stage and everything's kind of been open to modification, but once we switch to beta, we're signaling that we don't want to modify the APIs anymore, even if we do fixes or enhancements or whatever. I think we're okay, but anyone else on the call? Okay, so Mike asks in the chat, does beta block adding new features? I think it blocks modifying the API surface area. So if the feature is an end user feature, no. If the feature changes the API in an additive way, it's probably okay, but maybe let's not if we don't have to. That's my intuition. I don't know, Fred or someone else, if you agree. Okay, that sounds fair. How about we do release a beta this week? Mike, if you get that in, awesome. And we'll make an exception because this is a thing that we do really want for Shadow DOM updates. But, if you don't have the time to, we either change it in an additive way and do a 2.1, or we just add it to the backlog and wait until Lab 5, Lumino 3. Cool. All right, any other thoughts?
That was all for me. Thanks a lot, Darian.
Great, thank you. Okay, Jason, wow, you are up.
Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. Two issues that I wanted to bring to the attention of the broader group. Discussed it with some of you folks, but I don't think we've discussed it on this meeting. There's a commercial open source product called Uffizi that spins up a preview environment for every pull request. And from what I can surmise, Uffizi developers and business development people have been going all over GitHub, putting out pull requests saying, hey, we think that your project would benefit from Uffizi. They also have a license that makes it free to use in an unlimited, quote unquote, fashion for open source projects. I'd encourage you to take a look at it. I linked the pull request from the notes. The good news is that it seems to be much faster than Binder. It launches an environment in a matter of seconds rather than many minutes. The downside appears to be that like the environment is shared, which allows people to do potentially bad things to it. The good news, though, is that the Uffizi person who opened that pull request is receptive and responsive to questions and comments about it. So if you have any questions or comments, please add it and tag the person who opened it so that they can get back to us. This is something that they're offering to make available for no financial cost to us. And if the operations make it work, I'd be open to accepting it. Any questions about the Uffizi request?
You said it was much faster than Binder. Do you know if it's because they automatically pre-build the pull request? Or
I believe so. I believe they create it like as part of the pull request flow. There's like a trigger that auto creates it.
Okay. I was wondering how similar it would be compared to the existing Gitpod setup. You know, some of us use Gitpod, so you can work on JupyterLab without setting up anything locally. And they also have support for pre-builds, which means that when someone opens a pull request, they automatically pre-build, like they pretty much launch the initial tasks, which install JupyterLab in dev mode and so on. So yeah. I don't know like how much overlap there is between these two and how much work it would be for us in the long term to maintain this new configuration for Uffizi.
Yeah. The other thing that's of interest is that Uffizi, as they've configured it, uses what they call Uffizi Cloud, which is they host a software as a service solution. They also say that you can run the open source software with your own Kubernetes cluster. Which sounds free, except for the fact that then we have to set up our own Kubernetes cluster and maintain Uffizi on it. And I am also shaking my head. I don't know how involved that is. One other thing that we noticed, and I believe this may be mitigated, was that because there's a single environment set up for each pull request, there's a risk that like person number one who opens the environment could put some code that does something malicious or ties with your browser or displays some offensive information, and then other people who click through that environment would see the same thing. It's shared. I saw a comment saying that they, I believe, were at least trying to mitigate it. I don't know what the status of that is, but I encourage folks to check it out and add comments.
So just looking at the PR that you linked, it is you've been engaging with this and Jason Grout has been engaging with this. Do you have a recommendation? Either, Jason.
I don't. We also had a brief discussion on the mailing list for the JupyterLab Council, but I believe it was Jason Grout who suggested that we broaden this. We don't just keep this like via private email. We have this discussion more out in the open. And so I don't have a conclusive recommendation for it. I'd like other folks to check it out and ask about risks or questions that you have. I don't know if Jason Grout has anything to add beyond that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would say is if someone's excited about championing this in JupyterLab and maintaining sort of if there's a problem, contacting the company, et cetera, then I think it's a go. If there's nobody willing to sort of maintain this from within JupyterLab, and the fact that we had that weird concerning thing about the data being left over from one try to the next try, which I assume helps with their speed, then it's probably not the right solution for us. So I think a question on the call is, is there someone willing to champion this or maintain it, essentially? And it may be very easy, and the company's pretty excited to help out. It may be just, it always works and there's nothing to do.
Yeah, I mean, they're excited because they have a commercial interest in saying, like, look at all these people who are using Uffizi. I'm trying not to be too prejudicial about that because the product does seem to work pretty well.
But in the end, we need somebody on the JupyterLab side to volunteer to sort of be the point of contact about this. And if nobody volunteers, then I think it's a pretty clear answer that we aren't going to be able to support it from the inside. Any raised hands?
Yeah, I think
There's a raised hand here. That'll make this very easy.
I mean, logically, it would be whoever has set up like the binder stuff should consider, would you, how do you feel about potentially retiring the binder integration in favor of the Uffizi integration? Because right now binder is costing us money. We have to get sponsors. People on this call or elsewhere in the organization have to go solicit sponsors. Uffizi would become effectively a volunteer sponsor for this for as long as they support the open source offering, which I hope is a really long time.
Okay, so in lieu of
One more.
asking,
Oh, since there's no hands up, then I propose a way forward is to post on, I know there's several issues and PRs open sort of around this, so it's not clear exactly where the single point of contact for this is, but let's post on there and, you know, say, is anybody willing to maintain this integration? And if nobody responds to be willing to maintain the integration, then there's our answer.
So
and if it does respond, we still have the security questions that we want to
yeah.
resolve.
So are you going to leave those additional messages, Jason?
You know which issue is the most appropriate one to post on?
For the Uffizi request?
Yeah.
Probably there's an issue linked from that pull request,
Okay.
which was also opened by an Uffizi biz dev person. So we can open another one or just co-opt that one.
Let's just go off that one, and then that we can close it with a decision if nobody volunteers to maintain it.
Cool.
okay,
Thank you.
that's a good way forward. Thank you.
Okay. One other thing, so today's January 11th. Node 14 is reaching end of life on April 30th of this year. And to my surprise, Node 16 is reaching end of life 8 months from today on the 11th of September. Normally, Node long-term support releases, which are even numbered, reach end of life on April 30th. Node 16, because of one of its dependencies, has been moved up significantly. So long story short, I opened an issue to upgrade the minimum supported / recommended version of Node with JupyterLab to Node 18. And I opened similar pull requests on some other areas where I found it, like in the cookie cutter. So my request is to take a look at that issue. I believe there's a pull request, at least one pull request open related to that. And if you're able to, try upgrading to Node 18 as early as possible. Node 20 is coming out later this year, but it's not yet available. I think it's like in development still. But trying to get ahead of this before we end up inadvertently supporting an end-of-life product.
Thanks for keeping that on the horizon. I didn't know.
No problem. Yeah, I actually saw some reports to Node 12, some references to that version, which left support last year. Node tends to move pretty fast, as web technologies do, through its life cycle. So even the long-term support one only lasts for a couple years.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Move on. Okay. I had an update on governance. So as you know, last month we had the Jupyter Executive Council election. And we took a while to finalize the results because we don't yet have a standing committee to handle resolution of potential conflicts of interest. That is a standing committee that's written into the governance that we'll have to create. But since we didn't have one, we ourselves were responsible for handling it. And the way we chose to do it was once we had tabulated the votes and knew the 3 new members who had won in the election, all 6 potential members of the Executive Council made disclosures of their interests and shared it with the other 5 so that we could resolve whether there were any potential conflicts and how we would deal with them if they arose. And we've put these documents in a place that currently is only accessible to the Executive Council, with the understanding that as soon as we create a standing committee for conflicts of interest, we will share those documents with them and it'll be their responsibility. But that being said, we now have all 6 members of the Jupyter Executive Council. So the 3 initial people who were running the election were me and Brian Granger and Fernando Perez. And now we have 3 new members, Jason Grout, Steve Sylvester, and Anna Rubalcaba. And we also have SSC representatives for every single Jupyter subproject now. So one of the first things we are doing in the Executive Council is trying to find a time when every single SSC representative, or almost everyone, can join so that we can kickstart the Software Steering Council and reinvigorate and restart the Jupyter enhancement proposal process, because that is one of the main things the Software Steering Council will be doing. And Jupyter no longer has a benevolent dictator for life. He stepped down voluntarily. And Jupyter no longer has a steering council that has been disbanded. We are officially in the new governance era. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about it, but this has come up a lot of times, so maybe you don't. But I'll pause a second just in case. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay. Next person on the agenda is Eric Gentry.
Yeah, so I've got a PR out that fixes the extension tutorial. So this fixes some bugs that were showing up related to panel opening and closing. So those bugs should now be fixed. That was based on Michael Krasowski's fix for that. So thanks to him. And that PR also includes a bunch of other minor revisions and improvements to the tutorial. And then also, I recreated the reference repository so users can compare their code to a reference repository at different stages. I wasn't sure the best way to do that, but I have that repo with the code at different stages. So the current document links to the new repository, which is just one of my repositories. So I didn't know what everybody thinks is the best way to do this, but I can either transfer this to the Jupyter org, or I don't know how this would work, but that, I guess that's an open question that I have. But if anyone can review the PR and then I guess tell me what to do with this reference repository. And let me see, I think my other question was answered by Frederic. But yeah, so I have the PR, and then also I wanted to update the developer guide, possibly to capture a little bit of the information about how the docs get updated. So I have an eye toward doing that at some point too. So if anyone has suggestions, let me know.
So in the JupyterLab GitHub org, the JupyterLab _apod repo is your reference repo. Is it appropriate to just do a big PR against the JupyterLab repo for this extension, or no?
It's a bit trickier.
Well, yeah, I was wondering about that. So I don't know what access I need to have anyway for that. So I just recreated it in a clean repository. It is a bit tricky because I think right now there are different versions. So I don't know if I should be doing a PR against that, or if I should, or if it's better to just make a clean repository. Because I think it only has a few commits and they correspond directly to different stages in the tutorial. So I don't know if that's a benefit that's worth preserving or not. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think it's JSON that updated for 3.0, if I remember correctly. And I know it requires some Git plumbing to just have the single commit of the different state of the extension with a specific tag.
So yeah, there are a bunch of
without
tags
any
there.
history, so that the user cannot
Yeah,
get lost in older version or whatever.
But
yeah. So yeah, mine has like I think 5 or 6 commits that directly correspond plus the tag. So that's the state of the new repository.
but it seems like the main way to navigate that repo is with branches. Do we need to worry that much about the commit history? Like if you created a 4.0 branch, or if this repo had a 4.0 branch and you open a pull request against a 4.0 branch, would that not be appropriate here?
Do we need, I don't know, do we need the old history?
I don't know about the history. I don't think we do. I think we just need the top of each branch to be an appropriate, correct extension, right?
That's not how it is done. So basically, a branch is a version of JupyterLab, and every commit in that branch is the state of the tutorial runs. So the oldest commit is the first version that you get during the tutorial, and so on. And the last version, like the last commit on the branch, is the final state you reach. So it's not compatible with a PR in that sense.
Right. So anyway, does anybody know how to transfer a repository? Because if I can just give the Jupyter org that would be great.
Transferring it is easy, but if you want, I can take your code and then bring it in the official one. It will be probably easier, so that we keep the branch for the older version of JupyterLab.
Okay.
Release notes include a section about updating the example, and I think you can just follow those notes to update the example. So I just posted a link to those and in the notes right under your point.
Okay.
Thanks. Jason, did you write this release document? Because I'm seeing Git commands that I'm pretty sure you wrote.
We iterated it. Steve probably wrote the first version, and then every time I think it was updated, the document was iterated. Obviously, you can look in the history of this document.
I'm just seeing flags I don't know, and I find it intimidating. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think Steve and I were probably the ones that update it most of the time, and we tried to get it down to, look, just paste this command in. Like, if you understand it, great. If you don't, just like, it'll do what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If you want to give a try, Eric, what you can do is just to grant you the right on that extension. If you want to try like on another branch, not maybe 3.0, and then when you feel confident, then we can rename the branch to be the new 3.0, something like that.
Good. That's a good question. Frederic, can I ping you on Gitter possibly today? Cool.
It's gonna be late for me, but
yeah.
I can answer tomorrow for you.
Okay,
Tomorrow
cool.
for me.
Yeah,
but no problem.
good.
You can ping me.
Cool. Sounds good.
And can I just add, again, we've been iterating on these instructions. If you end up using the instructions in the release notes, if there's something that's confusing, please reach out. And if there's something that you think would be useful to somebody else, the next person doing this, please modify and iterate and add to those instructions.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, cool. We've got Tony up next.
Cool. Yeah, just wanted to say there's a first accessibility meeting of the year after this, 15 minutes after the next hour, 10:15 PST. Hope to see some of y'all there.
Sweet, thanks. Okay, so we do have an item in additional discussions, but before that, is there anything anyone wants to talk about that is not on the agenda but could have been? I'll give you a second. Cool. So on the additional discussions, we have a note about the notebook file format Jupyter Workshop. Who added it and what would you like to say about it?
I was adding it as the organizer for the workshop, just to tell people that we have postponed the deadline for applying to the workshop on next Monday, and we will also organize a remote capability. So if people that are, especially in America, as it's in Paris, want to join remotely, it will be possible. Of course, there is always the trouble with the time zone. And other than that, there is already a couple of private stakeholders that are coming from different European country, a bit less from US. So if you want to discuss the format, there's gonna be, like, people are really interested in extending some notion for SaaS and structure of the JSON, like, for example, to be able to read the metadata quickly without reading the old content, stuff like that. So there's gonna be interesting discussion. So if you're interested, I hope I put the link to the form. Don't hesitate to register. Also, if you want to come remotely. And thanks, Darian, for posting more information about it.
Yeah, so that is also linked in the notes. The dates are February 28th to March 2nd. And the other date you need to know is that you have 5 days until the deadline elapses for going. Great, awesome. Okay. Just, I guess, one last call. If there is no one, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'll wait a second. Okay, brace yourselves.